Hello, everyone watching. Hi. This is a different video than I usually do. Uh, Long story short, I recently got into toy photography, and I've been following someone on Twitter for a while who goes by Captain Dangerous, and she's here with me to discuss the hobby and help me learn and help anyone else learn how to get good, essentially, and all that stuff. But just in case um, you don't know who Captain Dangerous is, uh, how about we introduce her? First of all, I haven't let you say a word, so hi, hello.
Hello. Hope everyone's doing rad.
Um, okay, so I guess just how about you explain what you do? Who is Captain Dangerous? What do you do?
So I am a toy photographer slash product photographer slash kind of do everything, but mainly toys. Toys is where I started. Been doing this for I think it's coming up on a decade, which is crazy. Started with toys years ago, and it's kind of morphed into other opportunities and jobs and all kinds of stuff. But yeah, I basically play with toys and do toy sets for a living.
Oh my god! If you would have told me you could do that 10 years old, holy.
To be fair, I it honestly wasn't even a thing until like recently. So don't feel bad because I didn't know.
Quick sidetrack. Captain Dangerous? Where did that name come from? How did you get about that moniker?
So years ago, I used to babysit these awesome kids, and we all kind of came up with like nicknames for each other. And this is back before, like I said, like social media was really big, which is dating myself. And it, they started calling me. They called me Captain for a while because I was like the leader, and it was just like we'd go on like fun adventures and do cool stuff together. And they started calling me like Captain Dangerous because I was always doing like crazy stuff, like just whatever. I know it sounds super silly, but it's like where it came from, and it just stuck. Like I've been Captain Dangerous for like 15 years, and that's probably why I have the original like Captain Dangerous on Instagram is because I had Instagram before it got really popular, and that's always been like my main name. So yeah, kids I babysit gave me the nickname, and it just stuck.
It's not a bad nickname to have, honestly.
Yeah, like good job, guys. You came up with a cool nickname.
Um, okay then. How did you actually get into toy photography? How did it all start for you?
So back when I was growing up, my brother and I come from a family of five. My brother and I are super close, still are. Massive nerds, massive like action figure collectors. We used to heavily collect like GI Joe and like Marvel, like the old '90s and early 2000s like Marvel figures. So I often say like I think that's what started it. Is me and him used to like collect them and like pose them. We would actually like because our rooms were right next to each other. We would build like bases out of cardboard boxes, and we would try to infiltrate each other's bases with like our GI Joe or our Marvel figures. And during like whatever during like the weekend we would try to like put like a spy in there, and if one of us found it like in our in our little base, we won. Like that was like the game we played. So I think that's really what started it, is just my brother kind of being a big collector and him being into games, and him and I just kind of fed off of each other. And then as I got older and moved out and stuff, like I didn't really collect toys as much in like my later teens. And then when I hit like my 20s, I kind of started bringing out like all my figures and stuff I collected, and I started getting into just like photography. And I was like, man, this is kind of fun, like just like take little collectible pictures of them and everything. And back when I was like real small, I used to build little towns out of like Playmobil and Lego. Like I'd build little cities. Never took pictures of them. I just would like, build these little scenes, and I'd have like a scene for each like little figure I had, and I'd display them in my room. So basically, that from being a kid to now, I just started photographing it, and it became like this really fun outlet for me. I was going through a lot of really hard life stuff and changes, and this was just like a really cool creative outlet for me to like photograph and do artistic things. And it kind of just turned into like this little community of other people who, you know, wanted to photograph their collectibles. And I found like a bunch of really cool friends and people that were kind of starting out and wanting to do the same thing. But yeah, I would definitely say I attribute like my brother to kind of starting the whole like collecting of figures and things.
Oh yeah, I was never that organized with my toys growing up. I didn't get to build box forts, but I did have the race car bed with the hood that opened up, and
You're
that's
good.
where all my toys were. It was just all in there. Like I had a Bumblebee transformer, like an
Uh,
old school one, and GI Joes as well,
yeah,
and all the Power Rangers. Power Rangers was my stuff back in the day.
yeah. For me, it was GI Joe and Ninja Turtles and like all of the Marvel figures, which my brother and I still have them. They're probably worth a ton of money now, but we still have like. Do you remember when like GI Joe first came out and they had like the rubber band like joints where
Yeah,
they were like,
yeah.
we have an entire bag of those, like the original, like the was it Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes? Still have the original of those. And then all like the old like Star Wars figures too. Like I think I still have a bunch of those. Uh, yeah, like I'm shocked we still have them, but I was like I refuse to get rid of them because it's like my beginnings. Like yes, all of these super dorky, probably poorly made toys like started all of this.
Yeah, my favorite mine was Snake Eyes, but the little 6-inch figures about this big.
Yeah,
They had some articulation to them. Those were like the main ones I think I played with the most because they were
Snake.
cheap.
Yes, Snake Eyes was my favorite. Growing up, like we didn't have a whole lot of money, but every once in a while, like my parents would let us like pick like a GI Joe. And so my brother and I have like because the Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow, I think that's right, were our favorite, and we always used to get like the different variations of them because I know they've made like a cartoon of it and they've like done a bunch of stuff with it since then. And I still think I have like the full like they're almost like Barbie doll of them somewhere. Uh, but yeah, like we were super into GI Joe, and like I said, definitely like the old school Marvel like action figures. Like even the dolls. Like I think I have the Weapon X version of Wolverine where he's got like all the tubes and stuff in him, but he has
Oh
like no art, so he's just like
yeah. uh, the thing I had the most of though, and it wasn't even like my dad was a big car guy, and so that means that I had Hot Wheels, and I played with my Hot Wheels, but I never asked to buy them. My dad collected them through me, and it just goes to show you're never too old because that man was in his 40s, and I had the specialized crates full of these Hot Wheels, and I was like, ugh.
ones that it was like a portable like garage where you could put all like the little yes my one of my little cousins growing up had that, and I wasn't super into like the cars. I loved the RC cars. I used to love the ones that you could like drive around.
Hmm.
um but he had that, the little like garage where like the little ramps would flip out and you could store all your car. Oh, it was so cool.
All these toys you've had over the years, and once you started taking pictures, do you have any pictures and moments that stuck out? Like oh, I love this photo of maybe before the Nendos or during the Nendos. Like, what are some of your favorite pictures you've taken?
So I have a couple. One is it is an incredibly old photo, but one of my favorite ones, and it's because of the setting and how I did it. And this is before I really knew what I was doing. Um, where I lived when I moved here to Ohio, there was like a plot of woods like right across the street, and there was a small creek. And I remember setting up this photo, and I remember spending hours on it. It was the Figma Skyward Sword Link, like first edition. And then I had Alduin from Skyrim, which you guys can't see, but he's like up here. I set up this awesome like bad A like fight scene, and I had to take all the river rocks and build them up so it felt like he was in like a stone like cave area. I'll have to pull up the picture. Like I said, it's super old. And that was before like there were really any editing apps. There was nothing. Like I didn't really know what I was doing. But I think that was kind of the first time I really got into like doing like effects and stuff. And I think that's why like it's still one of my favorites that I did when I first started out. And then one of my other absolute favorites is the Pokemon. It was a Pokemon one. I actually hiked down south to the mountains because I'm in Cincinnati, so it would be it's I think it's technically like the Smokies or close to the Smokies. Red River Gorge. There was a log that had fallen over a creek and had like moss on it, and the sun was shining, and I was like, oh, this is such a beautiful shot. Took me about an hour and a half to pose them correctly so they didn't fall off, but it's Red from Pokemon, and I have the 3 starters behind them. That is probably one of my other favorites, mainly because the location was so cool, and it's like one of my favorite like environmental, like just there in the moment pictures. And then my other one is probably my first E3 that I took Toon Link with me, and I actually made him a tiny E3 badge. It was like he had a little E3 badge. And it was funny is like when we photoshopped it and like made it extra small, there's like a little QR code on the back that when you scan it, it puts your name up. But if you were to actually scan this tiny card, it would say Lonk instead of Link. And it's like a hilarious little Easter egg. Yeah, I mean, it actually works. Like we tested it. I'll have to dig out the tiny E3 cards. But yeah, it like you scan it, it says Lonk. But there's a picture of him, and it was when Breath of the Wild was first like introduced, before it was even out. They had like the beautiful set that they built, and they had me like go in, like I didn't have to, it was the first time I was being part of Nintendo. Like it was incredible. And they're like, yeah, just go on in if you want to take pictures. And I remember taking a picture of me holding Toon Link, and it was like, this is before this was even my full career or anything. Also, pardon my cat, he's gonna want to say hello.
That's completely fine.
This was my first like we've made it. Like I'm here with Link. I'm here because I've been taking these toy photos for years, and like Nintendo invited me out. And I think that's one, like, it's not a great photo, but it's still really special for that reason. Oh, yeah. So I would say those are like my top 3.
We'll have to pull some up for the people when they're watching this.
You can pull them up for people to see in the video because they're hilarious.
Also, what's the cat's name? We gotta know. Who's the cat?
His name is Handsome Jack.
Oh, Handsome Jack.
He is my best buddy. He's a tuxedo cat. He is a big baby. He loves to be held like a baby. And he gets very upset when Mom is in here recording and he can't get in. So he busted his way through my office door so he could come say hello.
Oh, well, we love it. We love it.
He's been in many videos for that reason. So anytime I record anything, people recognize him. They're like, "Oh, is that Jack?" I'm like, "Yep."
Is that a Borderlands reference, or is it a coincidence? Yeah. Okay.
So I have 5 cats. 2 were not planned.
Oh.
Almost all of my animals are named from Borderlands. So Handsome Jack, Sir Hammerlock, Dr. Zed, General Knox. The only 2 that aren't are Binks. And then an outdoor cat that she randomly just showed up in my yard one day. I call her Gypsy Danger from Pacific Rim.
That's right there.
Yes! Yes! I have a ball python named Aku from Samurai Jack. So, full zoo here.
I grew up with a lot of animals too. So I feel that. Getting back on topic. So let's get up. For people, like I said, I want this to be for beginners and people just looking for tips. So let's talk about setting up with really any kind of figure. When it comes to obviously the more articulation the better for a figure for posing. But what are some tips and challenges you've had to overcome when it comes to just general posing of the toys?
So when it comes to people that are familiar with the Figma line, Figma definitely has the most articulation, and they're much easier to pose simply because their anatomy is all like equal, where it's like Nendoroids, like, they've got like the big chibi head. So when you're trying to pose them, their head is so heavy, they'll just like keel over if they don't have a stand. But the one thing I've learned when trying to pose them, especially Nindroids, if that's what I do mostly, there's a they come with like their little stand that sticks in their back, but they
Mm-hmm.
have like a plastic stand that's supposed to like keep them balanced. I never use the plastic stand because you can hide it. Like you can hide it behind like their leg or whatever. But even so, if like you don't hide it or it's still in the picture, it's much easier to Photoshop out because it's clear. Um, so other times too, I try my best to like lean the figure against something, but make it look like it's not leaning against something. It's kind of like a trick of the eye. Um, but yeah, when it comes to posing certain figures, like I said, I think Nendroids are definitely the hardest just because their body is thrown off by their giant head. So you have to like distribute weight properly so they don't keel over.
um, so yeah, I actually have a really challenging figure. The one I just pointed at, right there. That's Gypsy Avenger, actually from Pacific
Oh,
Rim 2. He's super top heavy, which means I can't do anything but lean him against a wall. So if you were to have a super top heavy, but you want to do more action poses and you didn't have a wall, do you have any hacks to help pose something like that?
so I asked, does he have a stand of any kind?
He's kind of more of a cheaper toy. He
Oh,
came with like nothing.
that's tricky because usually if there's a stand, sometimes like the Square Enix, I can't remember the full name of them, Play Arts Kai, they either come with like a little thing that like holds them. It's like literally looks like a claw that like holds their waist so they stand up. But usually they pose pretty well on their own. But when it comes to action shots with that, like the only way I could think of, especially if he doesn't come with something, is like having something like that that either like hooks around their waist or something that is able to stick to their back. So you could have them posed and like, you know, they're maybe stepping on like one foot or they're like moving forward or even if they're in the air. But that's tough if they don't have a stand or something for them to like hold. And that's where like Photoshop and stuff comes in because you have to get like kind of creative in how like they stand up, especially if they don't come with something. There is a way to do it. It's just a matter of like playing with different things to figure out like what works well.
Yeah, he certainly doesn't want to work well
Yeah,
ever.
I have
Uh,
a couple figures like that where they just they're either super dense and like every little movement their throws their all their weight off and you just have to deal with it. I totally know what you mean.
yeah. So one last thing on posing, I'm curious about is that I mean, you know, obviously there's all kinds of angles. King Pictures is the fun part, you know, all kinds of angles you can get at. But has there ever been, or is there, a pose in which you think that is just really that if the character, the toy can move that way, is there a pose you like to put your characters in that just is like, oh, that's just a really good camera pose, just to have?
Yes. So I tend to focus more on like the environment as opposed to their like movement. But when I do want movement, I often love a good example is one of the Pokemon pictures I did. Completely spacing the figure's name, but she's running a pad and she has like one foot out and she's running like this, and I had to use like a stand to kind of balance her in place. But I really do love those shots where there's like some movement. Um, it's not super obvious, but you can still feel it in like the photo. And so like I love when like a character is either like maybe like running and like looking back or you know something of that kind. Those are typically the movement pictures I really love to do because it gives like a bit of a whimsy to like the photo.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I the few I've done, I've tried to get some good like just don't have them standing still. You know, even though you can take obviously good ones of them standing still, just little beauty shots. Um, but going on to something you said earlier with stands and people holding on to things, let's talk about props.
Yes.
Obviously, I think usually your more quality toys do come with props. I mean, Nendos come with their own stands and their backs and a different hands and accessories. But then you have other toys. I'll keep using Gypsy Avenger as a
Yes.
example. He just came with different arms. You know, they all just but in no stands. So when a toy doesn't come with that, and you don't necessarily can't really do life hacks, are there places to get things as stands and other props to aid the photo, like tables or chairs or whatever. Is there a place to get those, or is it easier to build them yourself?
So when it comes to like sets and miniatures, I either make them myself, or if there's something super specific, I 3D print it. But when it comes to like actually having a platform for like a figure to either sit on or whatever, something I've learned, especially when you're trying to get like proper lighting, using a TV stand is life changing. Because if you're building a small set on it, and let's say you've been setting it up for a while and getting everything just right, and then the sun moves, then you can just pick up the whole thing and move it to get the light that you want without having to disassemble the entire set. Learned that the hard way, because I used to just build based on whatever and just hope for the best. But now, like, I've started having things that are a little bit more mobile, so I can move them to get the light that I want. But when it comes to like specific props and things, if you're not real like crafty and making stuff, honestly, like Etsy, even eBay and stuff, if you just look up like dollhouse miniatures, especially just like specific on what you're looking for, or even like a specific scale. Figma are typically like 1/12 scale. Nendroids fall between 1/12 and like 1/6 or 1/8. It's kind of varies. They're like their own scale, so it's kind of difficult to like know exactly how that works. But yeah, like if you're looking for something specific, also if you do have a 3D printer, or you know someone, like there's some places that'll 3D print them for you to like a specific size, that also works. It really just depends like what you're looking for. And because this has been like a thing for a while, there are people that build things specifically for figures, like Figma, Nendroid, like even like specific like Marvel figures. So you really just got to get out there and look and see. And then sometimes like you do just kind of have to figure it out and make it from scratch if you can't find the specific thing.
Oh yeah, I'm completely terrible with my hands, so crafting this stuff is out of my wheelhouse. I had one of my toys came with a flamethrower, and I tried to put it in his hand the first day I got it, and I broke the handle off. And
Oh,
I was so sad.
Super glue, way to go.
I'm trying to super glue it. I have not had success yet personally.
Oh no, I straight up have like super glue on tap because of like random things that will break from not only my figures but my sets, my minis. It's like I have like a entire like haul of it that I keep just for that reason.
Do you recommend a specific brand of super glue that works better?
So I use some people do like the Gorilla Glue gel. I can't remember the exact brand of it, but honestly it's like a super well-known super glue, but it's a gel and it comes in like a little squeeze bottle. I cannot remember the exact brand of it, but Gorilla Glue works as well. A lot of times when I build like full miniature sets for specific things, I will use super glue. Some things I will use, it's almost like, I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it has the consistency of hot glue without it being hot. And it does take a little bit more to dry, but it also doesn't leave any like residue, where sometimes super glue will do that. So I super glue for certain things, especially plastic. Just use a very small amount, because the more you use, sometimes it will have a weird white residue around it. So you have to like be very sparing in how you do it. But one thing I will say is that hot glue is usually never the way to go. It is a pain in the butt. It works great with cosplay stuff, but not figure stuff. At least in my experience, it's not. Maybe there's like some people out there that are really good with hot glue. I am not one of those people.
me neither. Yesterday when I was trying to super glue something, I just glued two of my fingers together on accident.
Oh my! So many times I'm crafting, my friend teases me all the time. She's like, "Why don't you use gloves?" And I'm like, "Then I can't feel what I'm doing, and then it feels weird." Mm-hmm. So it's like I straight up like, I can't have those beautiful manicured nails. I can't do any of that. I like have to have my nails short because I'm building stuff. Because I'll either like crack my nail building something, or I get paint and everything all over it. I'm like, there's no point. There's no point.
So building. Let's talk about sets then. Obviously, a super important part of toy photography and getting these things set up. And we've already touched on, just looking up in case you can't find products, miniatures, or uh, 3D printing if you're lucky to be, around someone, which it's becoming more common. So 3D printing is kind of, I certainly know.
Yes, and there are some sites too. I can't remember these specific ones, but again, just like shop around. There are certain ones that people do have 3D like printers, and they will print it to whatever scale you need and mail it to you. So you just kind of got to look around. Because before I had a 3D printer, that's what I would do with very specific miniatures that were incredibly hard to find, and I couldn't make them. So it really just depends.
Oh yeah, but yeah, let's talk about sets and set design. What to you is a good basis, or is there a good basis for any, like a general basis for good set building and design for your toys?
It really depends on like what you're going for. A lot of people will sometimes build just like basic terrain. So like maybe like a desert theme or snow theme or ruined theme, like, with stones and stuff. I do that as well, but oftentimes I like to build sets that kind of fit like my style. Like a lot of times I do a lot of more plant themed, like cozy things, more things that are like the style of either my home or a style that can really kind of fit any character. So I have a lot of like very witchy, earthy themed sets. One, because I love making them, but also because it's very versatile. So it can fit. I could do witch Kirby. I could do just like a Nendoroid, like in like a plant environment. I have sets of like different bedrooms that can be changed to like fit a certain style. Like I have a bedroom that I built that I originally did for like Pokemon figures, but I rearranged it and took like some of the Pokemon posters off and put Kirby ones up. Like basically not making everything set in stone. So a lot of times I don't glue everything down to my sets. I keep them pretty base, so I can move things around and fit whatever photo I'm maybe wanting to do, or put whatever props in it that will fit the photo that I'm going for. So really, like I said, it really just depends set wise, like what you're going for. A lot of times people do the just environmental earth based, whatever. So they can put anything in it, and that's great. Like that's perfect. It really just depends, like I said, like what you're going for.
Okay, let's spitfire some terrain and see what you would recommend on to use to get it. So what would you use to I guess for grass, for fake, if we're not going outside, that's a different topic.
As I'm like looking around, because I have some dioramas in here. Hold up, I got you. Hold on.
Okay.
So there's this handy stuff at most hardware stores. It is insulation foam. And it's fantastic because it's cheap. It's very easy to carve. Like you can even use like a X-Acto knife or whatever. And you can get these beautiful like indents, to get like stonework and stuff in. It's light. It's easy to store. And you can build like this. Like this took me maybe like an afternoon to build.
Okay.
And like this moss and stuff that you see here for like grass or like to texture, you can get it at most craft stores or like hobby stores. They sell it for train dioramas, and you can get it in bulk for pretty cheap, but it works great in like adding texture and detail to stuff. As for just flat like grass, so the best thing I've learned, and people always ask me, where do I get like, the flat grass stuff? So if you look up on eBay, or even just like wherever, you might actually be able to find it in hardware stores. If you look up like grass turf samples for like a real yard, they sell them in like these little squares. Yeah, and they work great for figures. And not only that, if you look up fairy grass on like eBay or Amazon, whatever, they sell them in these like rollout mats. And when all else fails, the best thing to do is look up train diorama turf or like trees. Because a lot of times they will have stuff that is either in scale or stuff that you can make work for whatever scale. A lot of the times I've gotten some of my train diorama trees, like I've had to order them, but they have like every tree. Like they have, do you want a summer version of like this oak tree? Or do you want like a winter version of this? Or do you want just a plain pine tree or a pine tree with snow on it? Like, honestly, looking up train diorama stuff has helped a ton. So if you're looking for something incredibly specific, highly recommend it. And there's like full sites that will sell trees and turf and stuff like in sets for a pretty good price. But if you have a like hobby store near you, a lot of times they will have that stuff like in stock. So very, very helpful. And I only just discovered this like 3 years ago, so I'm still learning too.
You mentioned snow, and I know we've talked about stuff off camera before, but I can't remember if even in this recording if we talk about snow. But you gave me a little hack for snow earlier.
Yeah.
What is that?
There's a couple options. You can, if you're doing something outside and like actually building the set outside, I recommend using powdered sugar because one, it dissolves. Two, it's a very like soft powder and it captures really, really well on camera. That's what I used to do. Also, if like you have trees and stuff around it, if you sprinkle it on it, it looks like real snow and it's pretty easy to clean. But the other thing, if you're doing indoor sets and you want a snow that like piles up and like has a little bit, I'm trying to think of like a more texture to it. So the Christmas Village, the Christmas Village sets that a lot of people put out during like the holidays. I know like Michael's craft store has it. They sell them in these big bags and it's literally just like faux Christmas Village snow. I think that's literally just what it's called. You can even get it on Amazon. It comes in a big bag. It's very light and flaky. It looks super, super pretty in photos. That's another really, really good option. And it's what I use most of the time. Unless, like I said, I'm doing outdoor stuff, I'm, environmentally friendly using powdered sugar so it will dissolve. But highly recommend the holiday Christmas Village snow. Because, like I said, it looks real. It's super cool.
Okay, so we've mentioned outside a lot here, and what are some of the do's and don'ts of just doing pure outside shoots with your toys? So to avoid damaging or to avoid damaging environment and stuff like that.
Best advice with that, especially if you're doing more simple stuff outside, honestly, like it can be kind of difficult, especially if like you're wanting like a very specific set feel. But if you're wanting something more grandiose and more, like really taking in obviously all of the nature and stuff, you really don't need a lot of props or anything. But the best thing I can say, especially with doing outdoor stuff, when it comes to like water and things like that, if you're wanting a figure to be very close to the water but not in the water, using like the flat river rock that you can find in there, if you layer it just right, they can have like their feet in the water by about like this much, but not be super in the water. But when you take the picture, it looks like they're in deep water. It's like a kind of, like I said, it's like a trick of the eye kind of thing. Also using like whatever fallen branches to kind of fill in, like maybe the photo feels too open or there's not enough like things in the background to kind of make it feel, I don't know, more realistic, I guess is a good way to put it. Using fallen branches and like leaves and like kind of propping them up in the background really helps like bring some texture to the photo, especially taking it outdoors. There's many times like I've had to use like a fallen like leaf branch and like stick it in the ground so it's like in the background, and then I put one in the foreground so it gives it like that depth. That way you're not just like sticking a figure in the grass and then it's got like all this wide space, so it just kind of feels like a lonely figure in the middle of nothing. So I think those are like the biggest things I've learned when trying to like get a very specific feel when photographing outside.
Yeah, I actually took one recently of an outside pic when it was snowing, since it's winter here in the Midwest until April practically.
April, May, we'll see.
Yeah, just I've wanted to be very cautious as to not damage the toy, even if it's just snow and it can melt. That still can clearly affect, especially if it's a lesser quality figure.
Especially keeping your figures safe. So the biggest thing, especially with taking figures outside, is losing tiny pieces. So I started doing, when I have a figure, I buy those. They're technically like jewelry bags. You can get them in most craft stores, but they come in various sizes. And I put all of the figures, accessories, like hands, faces, whatever like things they come with in that bag. So when then I take them, like, I take my backpack, I take the figure, and I take that bag and I put it in there with the figure and what I want to photograph. So all the pieces are together. So when I'm like maybe changing parts out or whatever, I put that back in like the tiny baggie so I don't lose it, because I have lost hands, I have lost faces, I have lost accessories. So having the tiny little bag that kind of keeps everything compact and together has really, really helped. So highly recommend. Like I said, I think they're just called, I mean, you can use Ziploc sandwich baggies too, but I've just found like the little jewelry bags have always like been like a perfect size. For Nendoroid, Figma, whatever, I use them for every figure I have. So they're very helpful.
Oh yeah, those Nendos have such tiny parts.
And I have one that has a tiny like little like PlayStation, like a little PSP, and it's like a third of the size of like my pinky nail. And like I have a specific bag because I'm so afraid of losing. And another thing when it comes to like storing miniatures, some people do this with all of their Nendoroids, but here I'll pull out. So something I do with like my miniatures is like these little plastic, I don't even know what these are technically used for. Some people use them for jewelry or beads, but you can keep all kinds of like little, like especially things that get lost easily. I keep them all in here. So then I know exactly like if there's a specific miniature, I'm looking for, I know it's going to be in here because this is where I put, the array of minis that I have. You can buy stacks of these for very cheap, basically anywhere. And like they do stack, which is nice. But they've worked very well for me over the years. So yeah, jewelry cases or bead organizers, whatever these are called, they work pretty great.
You pretty much nailed the next topic I was trying to go into. I was going to segue into storage. I was like, speaking of making sure things are safe, let's do that. But no, like, it's good that you're able to pull out, because like in my mind I was thinking, oh, just bags and plastic storage and those.
Yes, and I was going to say another thing that works great. So I think these are at Target, but you can find variations of them other places. They are Snap Stackables. They look about like this. And you can literally like take the lid off. You can have like minis in there. You stack another one. Like I have a bunch of Pokemon figures and like this one. So it's literally like carrying like a little suitcase. So if you have like specific figures you're wanting to take out, because back when I used to do a bunch of outdoor stuff, this is how I transported them. You put your figures and your minis and you just stack it and you carry it like a suitcase. And it works. I mean, it works great. I have used these for years, and I've had other people ask me where I got them, and I think Target still sells them. But yeah, you can stack them as high as you want, put whatever you want in them. And they do come with like little caddy dividers. So if you have like really tiny parts, there's like little dividers for it. Super, super helpful.
You seem a very organized person, but but having 5 cats, as you said earlier, do you ever find one of your cats just knocking around a small toy?
Yes. So I have to be careful. All of my sets are in closed areas for that very reason, because I have one cat, Dr. Zed, but we call him Chummy. He loves to steal and hoard things. So he doesn't destroy anything. So if my office door is open, he'll come in here and he'll find like a tiny book or like a tiny piece of paper or some prop, and he runs away with it and he hides and he buries it under the rug in like our basement. And I used to have my sets in the basement where like they were kind of accessible to them. I had to move them all into a different closet that was closed because they were little thieves and they would steal them and hide them. So that's why I have to have all the doors closed, because they get super curious and like want to play with everything. They're not terrible, like they're not destructive. They bump into stuff because they're playing and they're excited. But yeah, I definitely had to like bar them from all of my miniatures because they would do that.
Do you ever find them at their closet you put it in knowing they know what's in there?
Yes, they get excited when I open that door. They come in there and they're like, oh, a bunch of time. I'm like, no, you guys aren't. So I have to like grab them and like toss them out. I'm like, you guys can't be here. You're going to steal everything.
Obviously, the biggest thief would be the snake, though, right?
Oh, I mean, he's pretty chill. He doesn't really care about anything. His favorite thing is to just chill around my neck. Like he's just happy to be where it's warm. He's definitely the most chill, I think, out of all of them. He's just happy to be here.
um, okay, let's dive into the technicals of it. Obviously, toy photography is it's two things. It's the toys and it's the photography, which means cameras.
Yeah,
Now, we pretty much live in an age where phone cameras are pretty good. They're pretty good. Obviously, someone. I mean, I have a Panasonic Lumix GX. Like, not everyone can have an
exactly.
$800,000 camera. Um, what? Out of curiosity, what kind of cameras do you use?
So I have a Canon 6D Mark II, but my main is my R6. So this is the more newer Canon camera that came out in I think the last couple years or so. Full frame, flip LCD, which I highly recommend if you're gonna do toy photography. Flip LCD. It has saved my butt in so many things. Gets you low to the ground. It's easier to see, especially like even with me like doing wedding photography or whatever. Like it helps basically in anything. Um, I've people always ask, like what camera brands I use and why I choose them. Canon for me, it's just what I started with. It was easier for me to learn it, and it's just been a brand that I've just gotten comfortable with. You really can't go wrong. Sony has amazing cameras with flip LCD, like their video stuff. Like their stuff is quality. Same with Nikon. Like it's really whatever like you feel okay with. Um, so like, and it's the same with phone stuff. A lot of people will be like, I just have like a phone camera. That's totally fine. I started with a phone. I started with a janky iPhone, fucking the fat curved iPhone, like the back, like it like ancient. Like I started with nothing. Like I didn't get a camera until I turned like 19 or 20. Like I didn't have like and it was like a T3i, which is a great starter camera. I always recommend like, those just if you're kind of want, like be on a good budget, not spend a ton, but also kind of want to feel out like how you're liking this. But no, you can do amazing stuff with your phone. Like you don't have to have all this crazy equipment. If you've got the drive and the eye for it, like you can take amazing pictures. It's just a matter of you having fun. Like that's what's important.
Oh
You
yeah.
don't have to be anybody else or oh, like my pictures aren't as quality as this person. I was like, doesn't matter. You're having fun and you're taking cool creative photos, and that's what matters.
Yeah, I can also back up. My first camera was the T5i back in college. I can say, and at this point they're more cheaper for the DSLRs. I would definitely say if anyone's listening, the T series you can't go wrong, and
You can't.
they you can sometimes get a brand deal with an extra lens, and that's the next thing I want to talk about is do you have any lenses that you think are like
This
good?
this is one of my favorite things to talk about because I get asked about it constantly, especially new people starting in any branch of photography, whether it be toy, people, whatever. So when it comes to toy photography, and I know every person is going to be like, "Yep, 100 millimeter macro." It it is a pricey little thing, but let me tell you, it changes the game. Like it is worth it. Not only is it amazing for obviously taking these beautiful close-up shots of miniatures or whatever. But if you're also in the wedding business or prop I'm sorry, like flat lay photography or product photography, those beautiful, clear, like detail shots with the macro are like they stand out above the rest. Obviously, that's a big step. I did not get a macro until way further into my career. The best lens I can say to start out with that always looks beautiful and it's everyone's favorite. They call it the Nifty 50 or the 50 millimeter. Not only does it get great depth of field, but it also is kind of just an all-around great portrait lens. You can use it for taking pictures of people. I use it mainly when I do wedding photography. I used it for probably 4 years before I had a macro lens, and it still got me that beautiful depth of field. You can get a 50 millimeter, again, like the cheaper version. I know there's like the 1.2 and like the 1.4, like the different versions, at least speaking for Canon. But they have like the 1.8, and again, they call it the Plastic Fantastic as well. And I think it's like maybe $100. So like starting out, that is a great lens, and you're gonna be so happy with like how beautiful it takes photos of really anything. And then obviously, if you really love it, like I started with the plastic one, and then I bumped up to the more high grade one, and then now I have like a wide angle. I think I have a telephoto, and then a wide angle for like landscape stuff. But then again, this is all kind of stuff outside of toy photography, because I kind of do everything. But when it comes to toy photography specifically, macro 50 millimeter, or just like the standard, it's like a standard lens that usually comes with like a Canon or a Nikon. Like when you buy like a camera, it's like I'm trying to remember the exact specifications of what it is. That works as well. Like really, you can start with anything. But if you're looking to buy specific and you want something that's not super expensive, 50 millimeter. If you want to up your game, 100 millimeter all the way. It is worth every penny.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was lucky enough to get with my Panasonic. Came with an extra one, but I will say, obviously, in case anyone doesn't know, camera lenses are often very expensive.
More expensive than the body. The body is the core of everything, but it's the lens that really does all the work, which is why they're so expensive. Worth it, but yeah, lenses are usually where the money goes.
Yeah, and obviously, if you're that far in and you're listening, you all have the camera and the lenses. Make sure you get proper storage for that, because those can be super sensitive.
Yes, very careful with the glass. Please put the cap. Listen, like I know, just an example. So like if you have this open, no cap, right? That is a little bit less of a deal than not having having this exposed, because this is where like the sensors and everything are. I mean, either or, like be careful, but this is a little bit more durable than this side. So if you're going to cover something, please cover this. It will save you many dollars and many hours of heartache.
And if you're lucky enough to have a camera shop within your local residence, mine lets me rent out cameras and lenses and all kinds of equipment. So if you even want to just try it out and you can afford it, try renting out a camera and see how it goes, as long as you're careful with things. Otherwise, it's going to be real expensive if you break something you're renting.
Yes, exactly. Like honestly, if you're wanting to get a feel for like what camera or brand you feel most comfortable with, absolutely. Rent, maybe if you have a friend that has one, like go on, like sometimes my friends and I will go out on like little like camera outings where they have a completely different brand than I do. I have a friend that has a Sony, a friend that has a Nikon, and it's just fun to kind of try different, and then they'll kind of realize like, oh, I really like this lens. Like what version of it is it for like my brand of camera? And it's literally just like a camera meetup where, you're trying out different stuff, kind of getting a feel for, what works best for you. But also that works if you're wanting to rent something, like, before you spend a bunch of money, please like test stuff out. Like it's, you're not going to lose out either way. At least you're going to know exactly what, feels good.
Yeah. So, excuse me. The next part, lighting. Lighting is super important, whether you use, for example, I just bought myself 2 LED USBs, and they work fine, and they're like $40, and it's pretty good for 2 color changing LEDs. And then some people use natural lighting, which I've also used, but that's obviously much more picky. What approach do you take to lighting, and what do you recommend?
I 90% of the time use natural light. So, but here's the trick with this. I've often told people, because they always, one of my favorite things they always ask, especially when people don't know their terms, because I was the same way when I started out, but I always love where they're like, how do you get all those beautiful little circles or spots? The bokeh? They're like, yeah, how do you do that? So I always tell them, I was like, if you want to have a lot of bokeh or that beautiful feel in the background, that depth of field, having the sun, and it's a little tricky, it depends on what you're photographing, having the sun directly behind your subject will give you that soft bokeh, because it's going to be reflecting off of your lens. But when it comes to other terms of like for instance, if I want something more dark and moody, obviously overcast typically is the best for photographers, because in editing, despite, maybe it's, darker or overcast, we can play with the colors and lighting in Photoshop, where if it's completely bright and sunny, it's a little bit more of a chore to get a moodier feel. It really just depends. I prefer sun for a lot of my photos because I have a lot of dappled light in my yard because I have a lot of trees. But when it comes to winter photos, I actually have two giant soft boxes in my basement, and I'll build like a winter set with the trees and stuff like that. But because oftentimes winter, you want it to feel cool. It doesn't really matter if the light is incredibly warm when you're taking those pictures with the softbox or whatever, because when you take it into Photoshop or Lightroom or whatever and you cool down the photos, they feel like they're outside. A lot of times people thought my winter photos were all outside. They're not. It's the soft boxes and how I edit. And it took me a while to figure out how to know the color palette for each season I was wanting to feel in the photo. Summer, obviously warmer. Same with spring. Fall, oranges and reds are more vibrant. Winter, blues are more vibrant, but it's way cooler. It's really just kind of learning the color palette of each thing that you're photographing. And again, it depends. It's totally up to your style. That's just me personally, how I've always done it.
I can say, having a bit of a film background, if you're curious about lighting, look up the three-point technique. It's the basic stuff. If you can't go through film school or any kind of education, YouTube videos, obviously, 3-point, 3 lights. Obviously, actual big lighting can get really expensive, so I do recommend LEDs, also because they don't heat up the room as much as these big boy lights do. We touched on editing a bit, and this is obviously a very big subject. This is not something we would have the time to cover. Well, if there's any, obviously it's Photoshop most likely, or any other Photoshop adjacent that you might use. Is there any general tips you would say you would find useful for beginners?
So especially if you're using, because I use Lightroom most of the time. Photoshop I use to, if I need to edit something out very, very specifically. Photoshop is way more detailed, where Lightroom is very basic. Less is more. So learning how, and again, each camera too, and even if you're using your phone, captures color and light and vibrance very differently. Canon tends to be a little bit more colorful, I've noticed, but that's just my eye. So when you're trying to enhance colors or lighting or sharpness or anything, it's best to try to get that feel in the first shot you're photographing, simply because if you take it into Lightroom thinking, okay, then I can fix all of this stuff, the photo will come off overly photoshopped and it won't look as genuine. And again, that's totally just my personal opinion. If people want to over Photoshop and do crazy stuff, awesome. That's just my personal experience. Oftentimes when I take photos, I try to get the colors and the base palette right. So then when I take it into Lightroom, all I'm doing is gently enhancing the color, the light, and the tone that was already there. That way it feels natural and it feels more genuine. Because a lot of times people think, oh, I want it to be really colorful. And they take the saturation bar way up to the point where it's neon. Oh, no, don't do that. And I speak from experience because I used to be like that. But that's why I say less is more. Just little improvements on things, and eventually the more you edit, the more you're going to learn how to maybe draw light to a specific spot. Sometimes I will use a color correct, where I want this side of the photo to be darker, but I want the sun to be more specific on this side. And I mean, a lot of it comes from experience, but also it's just look up YouTube. There are times I've had to be how do you get this feel? How do you get Like, like when I was first doing winter photos, I wanted to know how people made such warm photos, like they were taken in summer, make it look like winter. Like, how did they do that? So YouTube is your friend in that sense. There are tutorials out there all over the place, and people will show you step by step how to get exactly what you want. But honestly, the biggest thing is just putting the time in, practicing and kind of figuring out like what your style is, and like what your color palette is. There's really no wrong way. Like, it's your style. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I used to make commercials in a previous job, and I sometimes would dive into techniques. And I'm telling you, everyone I know, every editor, every person in anything, half of us just look stuff up on the spot, and then we learn how to do it right aside from it. And it's
yeah.
everyone's faking it till they make it. That is.
Oh, I still do. I've been doing this nearly a decade, and I still, like, I have a friend who's been doing it even longer, and she's like, I was trying to figure out, like, how to do this specific, like, and that's the thing, too, is, like, people, look up at, others who've been doing this for forever, and I guarantee they're still figuring stuff out, too. Like, there's no shame in it. We're all still learning. There's all, like, and that's the biggest thing, is it's like, yeah, you want to keep learning. You want to keep, like, figuring things out and trying new techniques and all that stuff. Like, I know I had talked about you off camera about, like being like a one trick pony kind of thing. Like, don't do that. Like, don't isolate yourself. Like, there's so much stuff you can learn on just photography in general. And you can also, like, obviously if toy photography is your main thing, you can learn things outside of toy photography that you can attribute to toy stuff, but it's like, photographing people or events or video or whatever. You still learn stuff and you can attribute to your one passion or, the art that you're really into.
Yeah, there's a bucket load of knowledge out there. And
so much.
You'd be surprised what you can learn and what you can apply in other places. Okay, let's talk about events and socializing and meeting other like-minded people. Maybe someone is watching this and they don't have anyone to talk to about toy photography. They can't all reach out to people. For hobbyist enthusiasts and professionals, let's start with the U.S. as a basis. Are there events specifically kind of more tailored for toy photography people that they can go to?
I wish. That's kind of the problem, and I'm like, I really hope to change that in like the coming years. It's a bit more of like a niche thing, but I really, like, I know other friends who have done like toy photo meetups like in California and stuff, and I really like want to do something like that here in the Midwest. I would love to actually do like photo classes and like set classes and showing people, because I've done it with my friends personally, but I would love to like open up like a whole thing for people to be able to meet and us share in this passion that's kind of small but like seems to be growing in interest with other people. But when it comes to like event stuff, so let's say like even just like a straight base like Comic-Con, right? Often if you show people or tell them or talk to them about like what you do, they're gonna think it's awesome because it's so different, it's so like out of the norm. And they're very much like, oh my gosh, like that's miniature? Like they freak out. They think, half the time people think my stuff is actually digital art, and it's not. And I show them the actual miniatures. Like I remember, so I did a meet and greet with my dear friend, Bailey Bay. She is on Instagram and she does these fantastic custom Pokemon cards. And there is a Pokemon store by us. It's like an hour or so north. And it's called Original 151, and we did like a meet and greet like art thing. It was just like a thing to promote like their shop. We had like a raffle. It was super cool. I brought my tiny Pokemon cards and I brought a set for people to see how I did stuff, and people were freaking out when I showed them the pictures because they were like, I had no idea this was a tiny set. I thought this was digital. I pulled out the Pokemon cards and I think they all died. They were like, are you serious? Like these are that small? And I'm like, yeah. So it's one of those things where it's like showing them like in person. That's why I always tell people, like, don't be afraid, especially at cons or whatever. If you're talking to somebody and you're vibing, you guys are both talking about art, show off your stuff. Like, I guarantee they're going to be into it. Whether it's toy stuff, like digital art, whatever. Like, shoot your shot. Like, it's, like, who cares? Like, go for it. So it's super cool. Like I said, I've been kind of, like, trying to, like, branch more into that and show more of that kind of stuff off at cons, just to kind of make it more of a normal thing. Because really, like, most of the time people are more into, like, the digital art kind of stuff, and toy photography is still very, like, a new thing. So like I said, as for, like, cons and meetups, unfortunately there's not really a lot of that going on. There's, like, dollhouse stuff, but it's not like toy photography. That, which sucks, because, like, I love, like, I don't know, I love going to, like, the tiny dollhouse stuff, but it's like, it's not really specifically toy photography based, and I hope to eventually change that. And if that means, like, I have to start my own, like, tiny con of, like, toy photography stuff, I'll do it. Like, I'm all for it. So yeah, like I said, sadly there's not really anything specific to it, but going to cons and things, like, show people your stuff, like, get it out there.
Are there any, like, maybe, like, Twitter accounts that would help follow to talk to other toy photographers at all?
Oh, there's a bunch. Whew. I'm trying to think, because there's, like, a whole, I wouldn't even say, like, maybe Twitter exactly. So I have a bunch of friends who do really, really awesome, like, toy stuff. I have a friend, Everyday Link. She's actually local to me. She's one of my best friends. She doesn't do stuff as much now, but she's also a really amazing anime photographer. She goes by Amethyst on Instagram. She's, again, not local, one of my good friends. And then someone that's on the other side, his name's Aaron. I'll have to give you his full tag. He does, like, really cool Pokemon stuff. BB Retro does really, really cool. He does Pokemon cards, but he also does, like, toy photography stuff as well. I mean, there's a whole, I'll have to just give you a full list. Like, I know a lot of people, for everyone to follow. Sergeant Bananas, he is, like, the pinnacle icon of, action toy photography. No Serene, same thing. Yeah, like I said, I know I've been doing this for a while, so I know plenty of people that, and they're all varying styles. So you can kind of, different people who are watching this can kind of be like, oh, I really, like, vibe with this style. So okay. I'll give you a whole list.
I'll put it on screen at some point. Post me, we'll get that. The final question I have for you, and yeah. It's it's a big one. This is your career. This yeah. is alongside the earlier mentioned wedding photography. You've worked for big names, Nintendo. Did you say you worked for Bandai, maybe Capcom, and
Capcom? Brief. I did little, like, Monster Hunter things for Capcom. Pokemon, Viz Media, Critical Role. I feel like I've done stuff for Tomy, which is their toy. Jazzwares, who does a lot of the toy stuff in the U.S. now. I might be missing some. I've kind of just done everything. Tokyo Taco Mode, done stuff for them. Obviously Good Smile, Good mm-hmm. Smile Company, and they're absolutely fantastic to work with. So yeah, honestly, like, I've done stuff on the side for, like, Square Enix, Microsoft, like, really everything I've touched in one way or another.
So yeah, you've worked with big names that we all, anyone who's geeky, nerdy, we all know them. Obviously there's a amount of luck to getting a job like this, like to being able to live and make a career out of it. But if you were to say any tips onto, any advice onto making a career out of toy photography, would there be anything that jumps to mind? Would there be any, like, maybe constantly tagging people on Twitter, maybe of being like, might be annoying, but
no. Here's the thing. So this is the biggest thing that I've taken away from all of this, because I am very much one of those people who's like, I don't want to bother anyone, and I get very shy and, like, nervous, like, wanting to, like, put myself out there. And it's taken many years of me basically being like, the worst they can say is no. And even if it's no, it may not be a permanent no. It might be, we don't have anything for you right now, but we're going to remember you. And I say that to say, when it came to, because everybody, you know, especially social media, everyone sees, you know, oh, you're getting all this stuff right away. Very few know how many years, you know, months, whatever it took to get that. Good Smile was like a year and a half. Like, it didn't just happen overnight. And not even that, like, I had been doing stuff and like trying to like work with them for years, but they didn't have a position for me because it didn't exist. So they made one for me. And that's why I'm saying, I tell people, I mean, to be honest, it was kind of the same with Nintendo. You know, obviously there's not a ton I can say, but like, it was a very similar thing. They loved what I did. They just were trying to find a way to fit me in. So they had to almost create a position for me that didn't really exist, in order for me to like work with them. So I say that to say, with people that are like, you know, I don't know how to fit my talents or, you know, whatever into something. If people, like, especially businesses and stuff, see your talent, they will find something for you. And I can tell you right now too, don't stop reaching out. You have no idea, because people get busy, companies get busy, they forget stuff. It's not that they're ignoring you, because I'm speaking from someone who has, you know, had to deal with a bunch of emails and stuff. They're not ignoring you. They just have a bunch of other stuff going on. And they've told me this personally, they appreciate me keeping up with them and keeping things on tap, because it was the same with Critical Role. I had reached out to them a year and a half ago, didn't hear anything. They remembered me because I stayed up and was constantly just like, hey, like, I saw this new thing was released. I would love to do photos for it. Didn't get a response. Was it heartbreaking and crushing, like morally? Oh my God, yes. I was like, great. They don't give a crap about me, whatever. No, they did. They remembered. They just had a bunch of other stuff going on. So I say this to everyone out there that's discouraged, who keeps like trying to reach out and like not hearing anything back. Keep pushing. Let them know, and obviously be courteous about it. Be like, hey, I saw this new product that you released. Like, I would love to do coverage for it. As simple as that. Shooting them an email. Hey, like, I really, like, I saw this. Like, I'm a huge fan of this. I would really love to work with you. Little things like that. And I know it's scary because you're afraid of rejection and you're afraid of like all this, you know, like you feel like you're being like a sellout. You aren't, because they look for that kind of stuff. And the fact that, especially if you're polite and like, you know, not being like, you know, pushy or anything, but keeping up on that kind of stuff, like, it just reminds them, it puts a pin in their head. And I'm saying that because I'm the same way. I'm like, oh, this person reached out to me, wanted to work with me. Like, okay, I got to remember that. So very similar thing. Like, keep pushing. Like, don't be discouraged if you don't hear back right away. Don't be discouraged if you don't hear back for 6 months. Just keep, you know, putting yourself out there, you know, saying like any little thing, email, like, just shoot it out there. Just try it, because you never know what they're going to say. Like, you might as well have at least tried instead of just, you know, never knowing. And that's literally how I've lived my life, like, the last decade. I never know, but you know what? I'm going to try.
That's really solid advice, Captain.
Like I said, I've been doing this a while, and I have major social anxiety and all that stuff. So I feel people. I'm afraid I'm bothering people. I'm like, doesn't matter. Just go for it. Just you never know what opportunity you might get. It might be life changing. Again, Critical Role. Never would have thought that they would have been like, we like are dead set on working with you. That's what I'm saying. Like, I never would have guessed, but it was because I continued to push and to ask and to, like, you know, keep engaged with them. You know, you can't just shoot one shot and just be like, oh, well, they don't want me. Like, people get busy. They're human. You just got to keep putting yourself out there and showing them your work and showing them what you can do. So biggest advice. Don't give up. Like I said, if you're rejected, keep pushing. It's totally fine.
Super fun last question to end it on. Two-parter.
Yeah, sorry, I went on my rant.
No, that's a great rant. That's great. That's what I was hoping for. Out of all the figures and toys you have, do you have a favorite? And of all the ones you don't have, the second part is there a dream toy that you want?
Yes and yes. My favorite is Nendroid Kirby because he's magnetic and he's adorable and he fits in every scene ever. And I have taken him across the world with me and I love him. So yes, Kirby. Two, dream figure, Skull Kid. I want a Skull Kid Nendroid so bad. I have literally all those people that have asked me, I have literally asked Good Smile about this, and I'm still asking. I have not given up on you. Trust me, I'm working on it. Because I know people have been there. Like, I'm like, yes, trust me. I want it to happen just as bad. That and Midna. I want a Midna Nendroid as well. So both Zelda, but yeah, I want Skull Kid so bad.
They would both fit in so well because they have the bigger heads, anyways.
That's what I'm saying. They're like already a Nendroid, so like just make it. Like, come on.
Oh, all right. Thank you for joining me, Cabin.
Of course.
Lovely as always. Do you? How about you plug yourself? Are you working on anything upcoming to look forward to? The social medias. What's going on with Cabin?
So I have a couple new sets I'm working on. It is a plant themed miniature office that's kind of actually based on mine. Also, I'm working on a set that is very similar to Brewster's Cafe and Animal Crossing, so I have that as well. Also looking forward to some new Good Smile figure sets that I'll be working on here in the next coming weeks. I think that's really it I have right now that I can think of. Yeah, unless like there's an email I missed. That's all I know.
All right. Thank you again for joining me.
Of course.
And for those listening, I hope you all learned something. I'm gonna keep rewatching this video edit anyways, and hopefully this spawns some new people into the hobby and gets some more pictures out there to look at and more people to just talk about toys with.
Exactly. And obviously, like, if you guys have watched this and I maybe didn't cover a specific question or something that you maybe wanted to ask, my DMs are open. Please reach out. I am more than happy to answer. So
I can say that's for sure. I messenger and I'm just some lowly nobody with barely anyone on Twitter, and she responded, and we're here.
Anybody can message me. It's all good. No worries.
Thank you all for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, week, month, year. Toodles.